Hey, before anything else tonight, just let your mind slow down for a moment, because what I'm about to say is not rushed, not heavy, not demanding anything from you. Just listen for a little while, maybe for the next 30 seconds. Just breathe and let these words meet you where you are. Because if you've been carrying silent battles, if your heart has felt tired in ways you can't explain, if you've been smiling on the outside but feeling weight on the inside, then this moment might be exactly where God is gently meeting you. Not to judge you, not to fix you instantly, but to remind you that you are not alone in this night. You made it here, to this quiet moment, and that already says something powerful about grace still holding you. Now, as the world outside slows down, and the noise of the day finally fades into silence, I want you to imagine something simple, not complicated faith, not perfect prayers, just a quiet awareness that God is still here with you. The same God who saw you in your strongest moments also sees you in your tired ones. The same God who carried you through things you thought would break you is still carrying you right now, even in this stillness. And maybe you don't feel it clearly. Maybe your emotions feel distant. Maybe your thoughts are scattered. But His presence has never depended on what you feel. It has always depended on who He is. And He has not changed for a single moment of your life. There is something deeply human about nights like this. When everything becomes quiet, the heart often starts speaking louder. Memories come back. Worries rise gently. Thoughts you ignored during the day suddenly find space again. And sometimes, without even realizing it, you start questioning yourself, questioning your path, questioning whether you are doing enough, being enough, or becoming enough. But tonight, I want you to pause right there in those thoughts, because you are not being measured in this moment. You are not being tested right now. You are not being asked to prove anything to God. You are simply being invited to rest. Because the truth is, you were never created to carry every burden at the same time. You were never meant to hold tomorrow in your hands while still trying to survive today. And yet, somewhere along the way, life taught you to overthink, to overcarry, to overprotect your heart. But even in that, God never stepped away from you. Even in your exhaustion, He stayed close. Even in your confusion, He remained steady. Even in your silence, He understood every word you could not speak. So as you are here now, in this quiet space, you don't need to force peace. You don't need to chase answers. You don't need to fix everything inside you before you sleep. You can simply be here, breathing, existing, allowing yourself to be held by a God who has never once let you go, even when you felt like you were slipping. And maybe tonight, that is enough. Just knowing that you are still in His hands, and nothing about your life has ever escaped His love. And as you stay in this quiet moment a little longer, I want you to notice something very gentle happening in your heart right now. Not something loud, not something dramatic, but something soft, almost unnoticeable, like the way the air feels after a long storm has finally passed. Because sometimes peace doesn't arrive with answers, it arrives with presence. And even if your mind is still carrying questions, even if your emotions still feel unfinished, there is a space being created inside you right now where you don't have to fight anymore. You don't have to argue with your thoughts. You don't have to solve everything tonight. You are simply being invited into rest. The kind of rest your soul has been quietly searching for even when you didn't know how to ask for it. Maybe today was not an easy day for you. Maybe you had moments where you felt strong on the outside but tired on the inside. Maybe there were conversations you replayed in your mind, situations you wished had gone differently, or emotions you quietly pushed aside just to keep going. And now, in this silence, those feelings are no longer hidden by distractions. They are simply there. But listen carefully. Pause. The presence of those feelings does not mean you are failing. It means you are human. It means your heart is still alive, still processing, still learning how to heal in its own time. And I want you to imagine something right now, not as a concept, but as a real moment between you and God. Imagine that there is no pressure on you in this space, no expectations, no performance, no spiritual burden to appear strong. Just you, exactly as you are, and a God who is not stepping back from you, not disappointed in you, not distant from your struggle, but actually closer than you've realized all day. Because while you were busy trying to hold things together, He was already holding you. There is a kind of love from God that does not wait for you to become better before it reaches you. It meets you in the middle of your tiredness. It meets you in the middle of your overthinking. It meets you in the middle of your silence when you don't even have words left to pray. And maybe that's what tonight is really about. Not you reaching God, but you realizing He has already been near. And as you breathe slowly right now, you don't have to fix your life in your mind. You don't have to replay your past or predict your future. Just allow yourself to stay in this one simple truth for a moment. You are still being carried, even in the areas you don't understand, even in the chapters that feel stuck, even in the prayers that feel unanswered. Nothing about your life has been ignored by God. So let your shoulders relax a little. Let your thoughts slow down just a little more. Because right here, in this quiet space, you are not alone and you are not forgotten. You are simply being gently reminded that grace is still working, even in silence. And as you stay in this calm space a little deeper now, soft pause. I want to gently take your thoughts somewhere even softer, not away from reality, but into a quieter way of seeing it. Because sometimes the mind becomes heavy not because life is impossible, but because we carry too many layers of it at once. We carry yesterday's memories, today's pressures, and tomorrow's fears, all in the same breath. And without even realizing it, the heart starts to feel like it has no room left to rest. But right now, in this moment, you don't have to carry all of that together. You are allowed to be just here, just now, just breathing. And maybe as you listen, you can begin to notice something important. You are still here, still moving, still existing, still held together in ways you never fully noticed. There were moments you thought would break you, but they didn't. There were days you didn't think you would get through, but somehow you did. Not because everything became easy, but because you were carried through it in ways your mind couldn't always explain. And even now, as you sit in this quiet moment, that same quiet strength is still present in you. Not loud, not dramatic, but steady, like something deeper than emotion holding you together. And I want you to understand something very gently tonight. Pause. Your life is not a collection of random survival moments. It is a story still being written with care, even in chapters that feel unclear. There are parts of your journey that may not make sense yet. There are delays you don't understand. There are prayers you thought would be answered differently. But none of that means your story is abandoned. It simply means it is still unfolding. And sometimes the most meaningful parts of a story are not understood while you are living them. Only when you look back later and realize you were being guided even in silence. You may not always feel God's presence in obvious ways, but that does not mean He is absent. Sometimes His presence is not in what changes around you, but in what remains steady inside you when everything else feels uncertain. The calm you feel for a moment, the strength you didn't expect to have, the ability to keep going when you thought you couldn't. these are not coincidences. They are quiet reminders that you are not walking alone, even when your emotions feel scattered. And tonight, you don't have to analyze everything. You don't have to understand why things happen the way they did. You don't have to mentally fix your past or control your future. You are simply being invited into trust, the kind of trust that doesn't demand answers immediately, but rests even in uncertainty. Because peace is not found in solving everything. It is found in knowing you are not solving it alone. So right now, as you breathe again slowly, let your thoughts soften. Let your inner world become a little quieter. You are still in God's care, still in His attention, still in His love. And nothing about your life has slipped outside of that truth, not even for a single moment. And now, as you continue to stay in this peaceful rhythm of stillness, I want to gently guide your heart a little deeper into something even more comforting. Because sometimes the soul doesn't just need encouragement, it needs reassurance. The kind of reassurance that doesn't rush you, doesn't push you, doesn't demand anything from you, but simply sits beside you and reminds you that you are safe right here, right now, in this very moment. And maybe you haven't felt safe inside your own thoughts for a while. Maybe your mind has been too loud. Maybe your heart has been too tired. Maybe even your prayers have felt heavy instead of healing. But tonight is not about pressure. Tonight is about peace slowly returning to you. And as you breathe gently, I want you to imagine something very simple, not complicated theology, not distant ideas, just a quiet picture in your heart. Imagine God not far away, not watching from a distance, but near you in this moment with complete understanding, not waiting for you to explain yourself, not asking you why you are struggling, not requiring you to have everything together, just present, fully present, with a love that does not step back when things get messy inside you. Because that is how divine love works. It does not withdraw when you are overwhelmed. It moves closer. And maybe part of you finds it hard to believe that sometimes, especially when life has felt unfair or confusing. But listen gently. Pause. God has never measured your worth by your emotional strength. He has never looked at your tired days and decided you are less valuable. He has never stepped away because you felt weak, unsure, or broken inside. In fact, it is often in those very moments that His presence becomes the most steady, not because pain is good, but because you become more aware of how deeply you are held when you can no longer hold yourself the same way. There are things in your life that you are still trying to understand, moments you replay in your mind, decisions you question, seasons you wish had gone differently. And even though you may not say it out loud, sometimes there is a quiet heaviness that follows you into the night. But tonight, you don't have to carry that heaviness with the same strength. You can allow it to rest somewhere outside of your control, because not everything in your life was meant to be solved by you alone. Some things are meant to be surrendered, slowly, gently, without fear. And I want you to know something very clearly tonight. You are not behind in your life. You are not forgotten in your journey. You are not stuck outside of God's attention. Even in what feels like delay, there is still care. Even in what feels like silence, there is still presence. Even in what feels like confusion, there is still guidance happening beneath what you can see. So right now, you don't have to reach for anything. You don't have to fix anything. You don't have to become anything other than what you already are in this moment, a person being gently held by grace. And as you let that thought settle deeper into your heart, allow your breathing to slow a little more. Allow your thoughts to loosen a little more, because you are still safe here, still seen, still loved, and still held by a God who has not let go of you for even a single second. And now, as we continue in this quiet flow together, I want you to gently notice something your heart may not always pay attention to during the busy hours of the day. Because when life is loud, we often only focus on what is missing, what is wrong, what is unfinished, what is still waiting to be solved. But in this stillness, in this slower moment, there is also something else present. Something softer, something steady, something that has been quietly holding you even when you didn't recognize it at the time. You are still here. You are still breathing. You are still moving forward, even if it feels slow or uncertain. And that alone is not small, because there were days you didn't think you would make it through emotionally. There were moments when your heart felt too heavy, when your thoughts felt too loud, when your strength felt like it had completely run out. And yet, somehow, you are still here. Not because everything was easy, but because something deeper than your visible strength was carrying you through it all. And maybe you didn't call it God in every moment. Maybe you called it just a hard day, or just getting through it, or I don't know how I did it. But looking back now, even if only a little, you can begin to see that there was a quiet support underneath your life that never disappeared. A support that didn't always remove the struggle instantly, but gave you the ability to keep going inside it. And sometimes that is how grace works, not by removing every storm immediately, but by making sure you are not destroyed within it. Soft pause. And I want to speak gently to the part of you that still feels tired. The part that doesn't always say everything out loud. The part that smiles when it has to, but sometimes breaks in silence when no one is watching. That part of you is not ignored by God. That part of you is not unseen. That part of you is not too complicated or too broken to be understood. In fact, it is often the most honest part of you. The part that doesn't pretend, the part that simply feels. And in this moment, you don't have to hide that anymore. You don't have to push it away. You don't have to strengthen it before bringing it to God. Because you were never asked to come with perfection. You were invited to come with honesty, with weariness, with questions, with everything you cannot even put into words properly. And somehow, even those unspoken things are fully understood. There are things in your life right now that still feel unresolved. Situations you wish were different. Outcomes you hoped would change by now. And maybe part of you quietly wonders why it is taking so long. But tonight, you don't need to solve the timing of your life. You don't need to force clarity where it hasn't come yet. You don't need to carry the weight of understanding everything at once. Because even in what feels unfinished, your life is still being held with care. Even in what feels uncertain, you are not outside of guidance. Even in what feels delayed, nothing about your journey has been forgotten. And maybe that is what your heart needed most tonight. Not instant answers, but steady reassurance. So as you continue to breathe slowly in this peaceful moment, allow yourself to release just a little more tension, just a little more pressure, just a little more control. You are still safe. You are still seen. And you are still being gently carried through everything, even right now, even here, even in this quiet night. And now, as we move even deeper into this quiet moment together, I want to gently slow everything inside your mind, just a little more. Not by force, not by pressure, but by invitation. Because peace doesn't usually arrive when we try harder to find it. It often arrives when we finally stop trying to hold everything at once. And maybe that is what this moment is becoming for you. A space where you are no longer carrying every thought in your hands, but slowly learning how to set some of it down. There is something very tender about nights like this. The world becomes quiet, the distractions fade, and suddenly the heart begins to speak more honestly. Sometimes it speaks in questions. Sometimes it speaks in memories. Sometimes it speaks in emotions we didn't have time to process during the day. And instead of running from them, you are here, still listening, still breathing, still allowing yourself to feel without rushing to fix everything. And that alone is already a form of healing beginning quietly inside you. And I want you to understand something very gently tonight. Your thoughts are not your enemy. Even the heavy ones. Even the confusing ones. Even the ones that don't make sense yet. They are often just signs that your heart has been carrying more than it should have for too long without rest. And when something is carried for too long, it doesn't disappear by ignoring it. It softens when it is finally held in safety. And right now, in this moment, you are being invited into that kind of safety, a space where you don't have to judge what you feel. Maybe there are things you've been replaying in your mind for days, or weeks, or even longer. Conversations you wish went differently. Decisions you wish you could redo. Moments that still feel unfinished inside you. And while your mind tries to solve them again and again, your soul is actually asking for something simpler: rest. Not mental exhaustion disguised as thinking, but real rest. The kind where you stop trying to rewrite what already happened and instead allow yourself to be present in what is still here. And I want you to know, you are not failing because you still think about those things. You are not weak because certain memories still touch your heart. You are not behind because healing has not looked the way you expected it to look. Healing is not always loud. Sometimes it is very quiet. Sometimes it is just you surviving a day you thought would break you. Sometimes it is you still believing, even if your belief feels small. Sometimes it is you still praying, even when words feel difficult. And in all of this, God has not stepped away from you. Even when your thoughts feel scattered, even when your emotions feel uncertain, even when your heart feels like it is in pieces, He has not once lost sight of you, not even for a moment. There is no part of your story that is hidden from Him. There is no season of your life that is of His care. And even the things you cannot explain to anyone else are fully understood by Him without confusion. So right now, you don't need to mentally fix anything. You don't need to reach clarity before you rest. You don't need to carry tomorrow in your mind while you are still in today. You are allowed to pause. You are allowed to soften. You are allowed to simply exist without solving everything. And as you stay here in this quiet space, let that truth settle gently inside you. You are still being guided, still being held, still being loved through every part of your journey, even the parts you don't yet understand. And now, soft pause. As you continue to rest in this quiet flow, I want to gently bring your attention to something very simple, but very powerful. Something your heart may already know deep down, but often forgets when life becomes heavy. You are not walking through any of this alone. Even when it feels like you are, even when your thoughts feel isolated, even when your emotions feel like no one else can fully understand them, there is still a presence with you that has never left your side. And I know that in difficult seasons, this can be hard to feel, because feelings don't always match truth. There are moments when truth is steady, but emotions feel shaken. There are moments when God is near, but your heart feels distant. And that difference can make you question everything inside you. But tonight, you don't need to depend on feelings to know what is real. You only need to rest in what has always remained true, that you are held, even when you don't feel it clearly. Think about your life for a moment, not the whole thing, just small pieces of it. The days you thought would never pass, but they did. The nights you didn't think you would survive emotionally, but somehow you did. The moments when you felt like giving up inside. but something quietly gave you strength to continue. These are not random events. These are gentle reminders that you have never been abandoned in the way you sometimes fear. And maybe you didn't recognize it at that time. Maybe in those moments you thought you were just coping or getting by. But looking back now, you can begin to see something deeper, that there was a quiet support carrying you through situations that felt heavier than your strength. And even now, as you sit here listening, that same support has not changed. It has not weakened. It has not stepped away. There is a kind of care from God that does not always announce itself loudly. It often shows up in very subtle ways, in the strength to keep going when you expect it to collapse, in the calm that sometimes arrives without explanation, in the small moments where you feel okay again, even after emotional weight. And maybe you called those things coincidence before, but tonight, just for a moment, allow yourself to see them differently, as gentle reminders that you are still being carried. Soft pause, and I want to speak gently to the part of you that still feels uncertain about your future. The part that sometimes wonders what will happen next. The part that tries to plan everything in advance just to feel a little more safe. That part of you is not wrong for wanting security, but you don't have to create that security alone, because there are things in your life that are already being prepared in ways you cannot see yet. You are not late. You are not behind. You are not forgotten in any timeline. Even if your journey looks different from others, it is still being guided with purpose. And sometimes what feels like delay is actually protection. Sometimes what feels like silence is actually preparation. And sometimes what feels like nothing is happening is actually something deeply important forming beneath the surface. So right now, you don't need to rush your story. You don't need to force answers that are not ready yet. You don't need to carry the weight of everything that comes next. You are only asked to be here, in this moment, breathing, resting, and allowing yourself to be gently reminded that your life is still in caring hands, even when your understanding is incomplete. And now, as we continue a little further into this peaceful space, I want you to gently notice how your breathing has been changing without you forcing it. A little slower, a little softer, a little more natural than before. And that is what happens when the heart begins to feel even a small sense of safety. It doesn't happen all at once. It happens quietly, step by step, breath by breath, thought by thought, slowly loosening its grip. And maybe for a long time, you didn't even realize how tightly you were holding everything inside. The pressure to stay strong, the pressure to keep going, the pressure to not break down even when you felt like you were carrying too much. And because of that, your heart learned how to survive more than it learned how to rest. But survival is not the same as peace. And tonight, something deeper than survival is being gently offered to you. Think about how much of your day is spent managing things, managing emotions, managing responsibilities, managing expectations from people, and even managing your own thoughts when they become too heavy. And without noticing it, you become used to carrying this constant inner weight. But right now, in this moment, nothing is being asked from you. No performance, no proving, no pretending, just presence, just being here as you are. And I want you to let that sink in for a moment. You don't have to earn rest. You don't have to qualify for peace. You don't have to reach a certain level of strength before you are allowed to slow down. Rest is not a reward for being perfect. It is a gift for being human, and you are allowed to receive it without guilt. There is something very sacred about this truth, that even in your weakest moments, you are still fully held by God. Not partially, not conditionally, fully. And that means the parts of you that feel tired are not rejected. The parts of you that feel uncertain are not ignored. The parts of you that feel emotionally exhausted are not unseen. They are all known. And still, you are loved completely. And maybe tonight, one of the deepest things your heart needs to hear is this: you are not too much for God. Not your emotions, not your questions, not your struggles, not your overthinking, not your silence. Nothing about you is overwhelming to Him, because His love is not limited the way human understanding is. He is not confused by your complexity. He is not overwhelmed by your pain. He is not distant from your details. And while people in life may misunderstand you at times, God never has to figure you out. He already knows you fully and still chooses to stay close. That alone is something your heart can rest in tonight. So right now, you don't have to carry the idea that you must fix everything inside you before you are okay. You are already being met exactly where you are. In this breath, in this moment, in this quiet space where nothing is required from you except to simply be still. And as you remain here, let that truth settle a little deeper. You are safe enough to rest. You are loved enough to be held. And you are not alone in any part of your story, even the parts that still feel unfinished. And now, as we move gently into this next moment together, I want you to allow your thoughts to slow down even more, like waves gradually becoming softer as they reach the shore. You don't have to push anything away, and you don't have to hold on to anything tightly either. Just let everything inside you loosen a little, not by force, but by permission. Because sometimes the deepest kind of peace comes when you finally stop resisting what your soul has been asking for all along. And maybe right now, your mind is still carrying a few things in the background. Thoughts about tomorrow. Thoughts about things you still need to do. Thoughts about things that didn't go the way you expected. And that is okay. You don't need to silence everything perfectly in order to find rest. You just need to stop letting those thoughts lead you for a while. Let them sit quietly in the background while your heart comes back to something steadier, something softer, something safe. And I want you to realize something very gently tonight. Not everything you think needs your immediate response. Not every worry needs to be solved right now. Not every emotion needs to be analyzed before you can rest. Your mind has been working hard for you all day, trying to predict, trying to protect, trying to process everything at once. But even your mind needs permission to stop holding the entire weight of your life. And in this moment, you are being given that permission. You are allowed to pause. You are allowed to stop solving. You are allowed to stop preparing for every possible outcome. You are allowed to simply exist without carrying everything at the same time. And I know that may feel unfamiliar because you are used to being alert inside your thoughts, used to staying aware, used to thinking ahead. But tonight is not asking you for that kind of strength. Tonight is asking you for surrender, the kind that quietly says, I don't have to carry this alone right now. And maybe if you look back at your life for just a moment, you will begin to notice something beautiful hidden inside your journey. Even in the moments when you felt overwhelmed, you still found ways to move forward. Even in the seasons when things felt uncertain, you still kept going. Even in the times when you didn't have answers, you still survived the day. That is not something small. That is grace working quietly in your life. There were days you didn't think you would get through, but you did. There were moments you thought your heart wouldn't recover, but it is still here. There were situations you thought would completely break you, but somehow, you are still standing. And that is not by accident. That is not just willpower. That is something deeper holding you together even when you didn't realize it. So tonight, instead of asking yourself why everything happened the way it did, maybe you can simply acknowledge this. you have not been walking alone. Even in the confusion, even in the silence, even in the waiting. And as you breathe slowly again, let that truth become a little more real inside you, not as an idea, but as a quiet comfort settling into your heart. You are still being carried. You are still being guided. And nothing about your life has ever been outside of God's gentle care, not even for a single moment. And now, soft pause. As we gently arrive into this next moment together, I want you to let your thoughts settle even deeper, like dust finally resting after being lifted in the air for a while. There is no need to rush yourself into sleep, and there is no need to force your mind to be completely empty. Just allow it to soften, slowly, naturally, like a heart that finally feels safe enough to stop bracing for what comes next. Because sometimes, the reason you feel tired is not just because of what you did today, but because of how much you've been holding inside for so long. Unspoken emotions, unanswered questions, quiet worries you never really told anyone about. And even though you try to stay strong on the outside, your inner world has been carrying more weight than anyone can see. But tonight, in this moment, you don't have to carry it in the same way. Soft pause. I want you to understand something very gently. You are not required to have everything figured out in order to be at peace. Life will always have unknowns. There will always be things you cannot predict, control, or fully understand right now. And that is not a failure on your part. That is simply the nature of being human. But what changes everything is learning that you don't have to face the unknown alone. Even when your thoughts feel uncertain, God is not uncertain. Even when your emotions feel unstable, His presence is steady. Even when your path feels unclear, His guidance has not stopped. And maybe that is what your heart has been needing to remember again and again. Not that everything is already solved, but that you are still being held while it is being solved in ways you cannot yet see. And right now, in this quiet space, you don't need to replay your past or rehearse your future. You don't need to analyze every detail of your life tonight. You can simply be present in this breath and then the next without attaching pressure to either of them. Because there is something deeply healing about giving yourself permission to stop striving for a moment, to stop trying to fix what cannot be fixed instantly, to stop mentally carrying situations that are already out of your hands, and instead, to rest in the truth that your life is not held together by your effort alone. It is held by grace. And grace does not rush you. Grace does not shame you. Grace does not abandon you when you feel tired. Grace simply stays and carries and continues working even when you are resting. Soft pause. So as you are here now, I want you to imagine something simple, your entire day slowly being placed down. Not ignored, not denied, but gently set down. Like a weight being released from your shoulders one layer at a time. And as that happens, there is more space inside you, more quiet, more softness, more room to simply breathe without pressure. You don't need to hold everything tonight. You don't need to solve everything tonight. You don't need to understand everything tonight. You are only asked to rest and trust that even in your rest, you are not alone. And as this moment becomes quieter, let your heart slowly accept this simple truth. You are safe in God's care, even when life feels uncertain, and even when you feel tired in ways words cannot fully explain. And now, soft pause. As you continue resting in this quiet space, I want to gently guide your heart a little further into something even softer, something more grounding. Something that doesn't ask anything from you at all. Just a moment where you are not pushing, not striving, not analyzing, but simply allowing yourself to be held by a peace that is already here, even if you are only now beginning to notice it. Because sometimes the mind becomes so used to movement that stillness feels unfamiliar. You sit down, but your thoughts keep running. You try to rest, but your emotions keep speaking. You close your eyes, but your inner world keeps processing everything that happened, everything that might happen, everything you wish had been different. And slowly, without realizing it, even rest starts to feel like something you have to do correctly. But tonight, you don't need to do rest. You only need to receive it. Soft pause. And I want to gently remind you, you are not behind in your healing. You are not late in your journey. You are not falling short because certain things still feel heavy inside you. Healing is not a straight line, and it is not something that can be forced into a schedule. It moves in layers, sometimes quietly, sometimes slowly, sometimes in ways you only understand later when you look back and realize you are no longer where you used to be. There are things in your life that once felt unbearable, but now feel a little lighter than before. There are thoughts that once overwhelmed you instantly, but now pass through you more gently. There are wounds that still exist, but they no longer define every moment of your day. And even if progress feels small, it is still progress. Even if it feels slow, it is still movement. Even if it feels invisible, it is still happening. Soft pause. And maybe tonight, your heart doesn't need motivation as much as it needs reassurance. The reassurance that you are not forgotten in your process. The reassurance that you are not being overlooked in your struggles. The reassurance that even when you don't see immediate change, your life is still unfolding with care, not neglect. Because there is a kind of care from God that does not always feel dramatic. It often feels quiet. It often feels like strength you didn't expect, like peace that arrives without explanation, like the ability to keep going even when you thought you couldn't. And in those moments, it is easy to miss that something deeper is holding you together. But nothing about your survival has been random. Nothing about your endurance has been unnoticed. Nothing about your journey has been of His attention. Even the parts you don't understand, yet are still being held with intention. Soft pause. So right now, you don't need to measure where you are compared to where you think you should be. You don't need to evaluate your progress through pressure or comparison. You are simply here, in this moment, still breathing, still existing, still being gently carried forward even when you don't feel the movement. And maybe that is enough to rest in tonight. Not perfect understanding, not complete clarity, but the quiet truth that your life is still in caring hands, and those hands have not let you go for even a single second. And now, soft pause. As we continue a little deeper into this quiet moment, I want you to gently notice something very simple, something you might usually overlook when life feels busy or emotionally heavy. You are still here, still breathing, still existing through everything you've been through. And that is not something small. It is not something ordinary. It is actually a quiet testimony that you have been carried through more than you realize. Because there were moments in your journey when you didn't think you had the strength to continue. Moments when your mind felt overloaded, when your heart felt tired, when your emotions felt like they were too much to carry. And yet, here you are. Not because everything was easy, but because something deeper than your visible strength has been holding you together in ways you couldn't always see at the time. Soft pause. And I want you to think about this very gently. You have survived emotional storms that no one else fully saw. You have carried silent burdens that you never put into words. You have walked through days where you had to smile even when your heart was heavy. And even though the world around you may not have noticed all of that, God never missed a single moment of it. Not one tear was unnoticed. Not one silent prayer was ignored. Not one night of overthinking was of his awareness. Everything you've been through has been seen with complete understanding, even when you felt unseen by others. And maybe that is something your heart needs to slowly accept tonight, that you have never been invisible in your struggle, even when it felt like no one understood you fully. Soft pause. There is a kind of comfort that comes when you realize you don't have to explain everything in order to be understood by God. You don't have to organize your emotions perfectly. You don't have to find the right words. You don't have to make your story sound clear or structured, because He already knows the full weight of what you carry inside you. And that means even the things you avoid thinking about, even the things you push away during the day, even the emotions you don't fully understand yourself, are already fully known. And still, there is no rejection in that knowledge. There is only presence, only care, only steady love that does not change based on your emotional state. Soft pause. And I want to gently remind you of something very important tonight. You are not defined by your hardest days. You are not defined by your moments of confusion. You are not defined by the times you felt weak or uncertain or overwhelmed. Those are parts of your story, but they are not your identity. Your identity is deeper than your struggle, deeper than your anxiety, deeper than your past, deeper than the things you are still trying to understand. You are someone who is still being guided, still being shaped, still being held through every chapter of your life, even the ones that feel unfinished right now. And maybe you don't need to fully understand your journey tonight. Maybe you don't need to map out every step ahead. Maybe what your heart truly needs is something simpler, the reassurance that you are not walking through any of this alone, and you never have been. So as you rest here, let that truth settle softly inside you. You are still in God's care, still in His attention, still in His gentle guidance. And nothing about your life has ever been of His love, not even for a single moment. And now, soft pause. As we move gently into this next part of your quiet time, I want you to slow everything down inside your thoughts just a little more. Not by trying harder, not by forcing anything, but simply by allowing yourself to loosen your grip on everything you've been mentally holding. Because sometimes the mind doesn't realize how tightly it's holding life until it is finally given permission to release it. And maybe tonight is that kind of moment for you. A moment where you don't have to carry every thought with full intensity. A moment where you don't have to solve, analyze, or replay everything happening inside you. You can just be here, in this breath, in this stillness, in this quiet space where nothing is being demanded from you. Soft pause. And I want you to gently realize something very important. You are allowed to pause without losing progress. You are allowed to rest without falling behind. You are allowed to stop mentally pushing yourself without everything collapsing. Because your life is not held together by your constant effort alone. There is a grace working quietly underneath your life that continues even when you stop striving. And maybe that's something you rarely give yourself permission to believe. That things can still be okay even when you are not constantly trying to fix them in your mind. That your future is not dependent on your ability to control every detail tonight. That your safety does not come from overthinking every possible outcome, but from something deeper, something steadier, something you don't have to maintain through effort. Soft pause. Think for a moment about how much energy you have spent trying to prepare for things that haven't even happened yet. Trying to predict conversations. Trying to avoid mistakes. Trying to stay emotionally ready for every possibility. And without realizing it, That kind of inner tension becomes a weight you carry all day long. But right now, in this moment, you are not required to carry any of that. You don't have to rehearse tomorrow. You don't have to correct yesterday. You don't have to mentally stay ahead of everything. You are allowed to simply remain in today, in this one breath, in this one peaceful space where nothing is demanding your attention except rest. And I want to gently remind you again, God has never been surprised by your struggles. Nothing you are dealing with right now is confusing to him. Nothing you are feeling is too complicated for him to understand. Even the thoughts you struggle to put into words are already fully known. And still, there is patience toward you. Still, there is care toward you. Still, there is love that does not withdraw when you feel overwhelmed. Because divine love does not respond the way human pressure does. It does not say, "Come back when you are better." It stays. It remains close. It continues to hold you even in your weakest moments. And maybe that is what your heart has been needing to hear again, that you are not required to be fully strong in order to be fully loved. So as you continue in this quiet space, allow yourself to release just a little more tension, just a little more control, just a little more mental pressure. You are still being guided, still being held, still being cared for in ways you cannot always see, but can slowly begin to trust. And now, as we continue together into this deeper place of stillness, I want you to notice how nothing is being rushed right now. Not your thoughts, not your emotions, not even your breathing. Everything is slowly allowed to settle at its own pace. And that is important because healing never responds well to pressure. It responds to gentleness. It responds to space. It responds to moments like this where you are not being asked to fix anything inside you, but simply to let yourself exist without resistance. And maybe for a long time, you've been living in a kind of inner pressure that you didn't even fully notice anymore. The pressure to be okay faster. The pressure to understand things that are still unfolding. The pressure to stay strong even when your heart feels like it needs rest. And slowly, that pressure becomes so normal that you forget what it feels like to simply be without it. But right now, you are being reminded of something softer. You are allowed to be here without pressure. And I want you to gently understand something very important. Your value is not connected to how much you are able to carry. It is not connected to how strong you appear on your hardest days. It is not connected to how quickly you recover from emotional pain. You are not measured by how perfectly you manage your life or how well you hide your struggles. You are valued simply because you exist. And that truth does not change on good days or bad days. It does not change when you feel confident or when you feel uncertain. It does not change when you feel emotionally strong or when you feel completely drained. Your worth is not something that rises and falls with your circumstances. It remains steady, even when everything inside you feels unsettled. And maybe tonight, there are parts of you that feel tired in ways you cannot fully explain. Not just physical tiredness, but emotional tiredness. The kind that comes from thinking too much, feeling too deeply, and carrying things silently for too long. And I want you to know that kind of tiredness is not a weakness. It is a sign that your heart has been doing its best for a long time without enough rest. And you don't need to judge that part of yourself. You don't need to criticize it or push it away. You can simply acknowledge it and allow it to rest. Because even your emotions deserve a place where they are not rushed, not corrected, not ignored, but simply held with understanding. And I want to remind you again, God has never been distant from your emotional world. Even the feelings you don't fully understand are not confusing to him. Even the thoughts you avoid are not hidden from him. Even the parts of your story you don't speak about are already fully seen. And still, there is no rejection in that knowledge. There is no distance. There is only closeness. A closeness that does not depend on how well you are doing. A closeness that does not fade when you feel weak. A closeness that remains steady even in your most uncertain moments. So right now, you don't have to carry yourself with strength. You don't have to hold everything together inside you. You are allowed to rest in the truth that you are already held, already known, and already deeply cared for in every part of your journey, even the parts that still feel unfinished. And now, as you continue in this quiet and peaceful space, let your thoughts slow down even more, like waves gently touching the shore and then softly pulling back again, leaving everything calmer than before. You don't need to reach for anything in this moment, and you don't need to hold on to anything tightly. Just allow yourself to be here, fully present, without pressure, without expectation, without the need to fix or figure anything out right now. Because sometimes the deepest kind of healing does not come from answers, it comes from rest. It comes from finally allowing your mind to stop running in circles, finally allowing your heart to stop carrying conversations that don't need to be replayed anymore, and finally allowing your soul to breathe without carrying the weight of everything at once. And maybe that is what this moment is becoming for you. A gentle space where nothing is required except your presence. You may not always realize how much you carry throughout the day. The silent worries, the unspoken fears, the responsibilities you manage without telling anyone how heavy they feel sometimes. And over time, this becomes your normal way of living. Always alert, always thinking ahead, always trying to stay prepared for everything. But even the strongest hearts were never designed to stay in constant tension. Even the strongest minds need moments where they can soften and let go. And right now, you are in one of those moments. A moment where nothing is being asked from you. A moment where you are not being measured by how strong you are, or how much you can handle, or how well you are keeping everything together. You are simply here, and that is enough. You don't have to solve tomorrow tonight. You don't have to fix yesterday in your mind. You don't have to replay situations trying to find a different outcome. Because what is done is already in the past, and what is coming has not arrived yet. All you truly have is this moment, and in this moment, you are safe to slow down. There is something deeply important your heart needs to remember again and again. You are not alone in your journey. Even when it feels like no one fully understands what you are going through, even when your emotions feel too complicated to explain, even when your thoughts feel too heavy to share, you are still being held in ways you cannot always see. Nothing about your life is unnoticed. Nothing about your struggle is ignored. Nothing about your silence is forgotten. And maybe the most comforting truth tonight is this: you don't have to earn rest. You don't have to deserve peace. You don't have to prove that you are strong enough before you are allowed to be still. Rest is already being offered to you in this moment, not as something you must achieve, but as something you are invited to receive. So as you continue to breathe gently, let your thoughts become softer, let your inner world become quieter, and allow yourself to simply remain here without pressure. You are still being guided, still being cared for, and still being held through everything, even in the parts of your life you don't fully understand yet. And now as you continue to stay in this peaceful flow, let your mind settle even deeper, like a calm night sky slowly becoming still after a long day. There is nothing you need to chase right now, nothing you need to figure out, nothing you need to hold together. Just allow yourself to be here in this quiet space where your heart does not have to perform or prove anything. Because sometimes you spend so much time being strong for others, or even strong for yourself, that you forget what it feels like to simply rest without guilt. You forget what it feels like to pause without worrying that something will fall apart. But right here in this moment, nothing is falling apart. You are safe to slow down. You are safe to breathe without pressure. You are safe to stop holding everything so tightly. And maybe your mind still tries to bring up things from your day, or your past, or even things about tomorrow. That is okay. You don't need to fight your thoughts. You don't need to force them away. Just let them pass like clouds moving gently across the sky without holding on to any of them. You are not your thoughts. You are not your worries. You are the one observing them, and you are still here beyond all of them. There is something very important your heart needs to hear again. You are not defined by your busiest days or your hardest moments. You are not defined by the mistakes you think about or the things you wish you had done differently. You are not defined by the seasons where you felt weak or uncertain. You are so much deeper than all of that. There is a part of you that remains steady even when everything else feels unstable. And even in the moments when you feel distant or tired or emotionally drained, you are still deeply known. There is nothing inside your heart that is hidden from God. Nothing you are carrying that is too complicated for Him to understand. Nothing you are feeling that makes you less worthy of love or care. Even your silence is understood. Even your confusion is seen with patience. Even your exhaustion is held with compassion. You don't have to explain yourself fully to be accepted. You don't have to organize your emotions into perfect words. You don't have to clean up your thoughts before coming into peace. You are already seen completely and still loved completely right here as you are. And maybe tonight you can allow yourself to release just a little more of the weight you have been carrying. Not all at once, not forcefully, just slowly letting go of the need to control everything in your mind. Slowly letting go of the pressure to have answers right now. Slowly letting go of the belief that you must carry everything alone. Because you were never meant to carry life in isolation. You were never meant to hold every burden without rest. And even now in this quiet moment, there is something gently holding you that has never let you go, even when you felt lost or overwhelmed or unsure. So stay here a little longer in this softness, in this stillness, in this quiet assurance that you are not forgotten and you are not alone. You are still being guided even in what feels unclear, and you are still being loved even in what feels heavy. And now, as you remain in this quiet space, let everything around your thoughts become even softer, like the last light of evening slowly fading into a peaceful night. There is nothing you need to rush toward and nothing you need to hold tightly in this moment. Just allow yourself to stay here without pressure, without expectation, without trying to become anything other than what you already are right now. Because sometimes your heart carries more weight than you realize. Not always in obvious ways, but in quiet, invisible ways that build up over time. The thoughts you never speak out loud. The worries you try to manage alone. The emotions you push aside just to keep functioning through the day. And slowly that becomes heavy inside you, even if you don't always show it on the outside. But right now you don't need to carry any of that in the same way. You can let this moment be different. A moment where you are not solving anything. A moment where you are not preparing for anything. A moment where you are not fixing anything inside your mind. Just a space where your soul is allowed to breathe again without pressure. And if your thoughts try to pull you back into yesterday or forward into tomorrow, just notice them gently and let them pass. You do not need to follow every thought that appears in your mind. You do not need to answer every question your mind brings up. You are not required to engage with every worry that tries to rise. You can simply return to this breath and this stillness again and again. There is something very important to remember here. You are not your past. You are not your mistakes. You are not your moments of weakness or confusion. You are not defined by the times you felt overwhelmed or uncertain. Those are experiences you have gone through, but they are not your identity. There is something deeper inside you that remains steady even when everything else feels unstable. And even in the parts of your life where you feel unseen or misunderstood, there is a presence that has never stepped away from you. You are fully known in your silence, fully understood in your confusion, fully held in your weakness. Nothing about your inner world is hidden from God. Nothing about your struggle is ignored. Nothing about your journey is of His awareness. You don't need to explain your entire story in perfect words to be understood. You don't need to organize your emotions before you come to peace. You don't need to fix everything inside you before you are allowed to rest. You are already seen completely and still loved completely in this very moment exactly as you are. So allow yourself to release a little more right now. Not everything at once. Just a little more of the pressure. A little more of the mental weight. A little more of the need to control what you cannot control. Because you were never meant to carry life alone in this way. And as you stay here in this gentle quietness, remember this truth, slowly letting it settle inside you. You are still being guided. You are still being protected. You are still being carried through every part of your journey, even the parts you don't understand yet. And nothing about your life has ever been of God's loving care, not even for a single moment. And now, as you continue to rest in this quiet and gentle space, I want you to notice something very tender happening inside you right now. Not something forced, not something dramatic, but something almost invisible, like the way warmth slowly fills a room without you noticing exactly when it began. Because that is often how peace arrives, not all at once, not loudly, not with announcement, but quietly, one breath at a time, one softened thought at a time, until suddenly you realize that something inside you feels a little lighter than it did before. And maybe that is what is beginning to happen in you right now. You have been carrying something for a long time. Not just today, and not just this week, but for a while now. There has been a kind of inner heaviness that you have learned to live with, a background weight that follows you even into moments that should feel simple. And you have become so used to it that sometimes you don't even notice it anymore. You just move through your days holding it without ever setting it down. But I want you to gently consider something tonight. What if you don't have to keep holding it with the same grip? What if this moment is actually an invitation to loosen your hold? Just a little, not because everything is resolved, but because you were never meant to carry it all alone. Because there is a truth your heart needs to hear again and again until it finally settles deeply inside you. You are not required to have everything figured out in order to receive peace. You are not required to be fully healed before you are allowed to feel calm. You are not required to understand every reason, every delay, every unanswered prayer before you are allowed to simply rest in this moment. Peace is not something you earn by solving enough problems. It is something that meets you right where you are, even in the middle of your questions, even in the middle of your confusion, even in the middle of the things that still feel unfinished inside you. And maybe that is one of the most difficult things to accept, that peace can exist alongside uncertainty, that rest is possible even when not everything is resolved, that you can feel held even when you don't have all the answers yet. But this is exactly the kind of peace that does not depend on circumstances. It is the kind that remains steady even when life feels unsteady. The kind that doesn't wait for everything to be perfect before it arrives. the kind that is already here, in this breath, in this stillness, gently waiting for you to notice it. So right now, you don't have to do anything except stay here. You don't have to be stronger than you feel. You don't have to understand more than you currently do. You are simply being invited to receive what is already being offered to you in this moment. Rest without conditions, peace without pressure, and the quiet reassurance that you are still being held, still being guided, and still deeply loved through every single part of your journey, even right now, even here, even in this gentle silence. And now, as you stay a little longer in this gentle stillness, I want you to allow your heart to go somewhere even softer. Not away from where you are, but deeper into it. Because there is a difference between being physically still and being truly at rest inside. You can be sitting quietly on the outside while your mind is still running in 10 different directions on the inside. And maybe that has been your experience for a long time. A life that looks calm from the outside, but an inner world that never fully stops moving. Always processing, always preparing, always staying one step ahead just to feel safe. But tonight, even that inner movement is being gently invited to slow down. Because the truth is, your mind has been working so hard for you, trying to protect you, trying to predict what comes next, trying to keep you safe from disappointment by thinking through every possible outcome before it arrives. And while that part of you has always meant well, it has also kept you from something very important, the ability to simply be present without carrying tomorrow in your hands at the same time. And right now, in this moment, you are being given something very rare, a space where tomorrow does not need to be managed yet. A space where yesterday does not need to be replayed anymore. A space where right now, this breath, this stillness, this quiet moment is all that exists. And I want you to understand something very gently. Being present is not the same as being unprepared. Resting is not the same as giving up. Letting go of mental control for a moment is not the same as losing your way. In fact, it is often in the moments when you stop pushing so hard inside your thoughts that the clearest sense of direction begins to quietly return to you. Not because you forced it, but because you finally created enough space inside yourself for something steadier to emerge. And that steadiness has always been there. It was simply waiting for the noise to soften enough to be noticed. There are things in your life that you have been waiting on for a long time. Prayers that feel like they are still somewhere between being spoken and being answered. Situations that feel like they are stuck in a place you cannot move them from no matter how much you think about them. And in that waiting, it is so easy to begin to wonder if something has been forgotten about you. If somehow your needs slipped past unnoticed. If somehow your turn simply hasn't come yet for reasons you cannot understand. But I want to gently speak to that part of you tonight and remind you of something deeply important. Nothing about you has been overlooked. Not one detail of your life has been forgotten. The waiting you are experiencing is not the same as being ignored. And the silence you sometimes feel is not the same as being abandoned. So as you breathe slowly right now, allow that truth to settle somewhere deeper than your thoughts, into that quiet place inside your chest where words don't always reach, but where something true is still felt. You are not forgotten. You are not overlooked. You are not behind. You are simply still in the middle of a story that has not finished being written yet, and the one writing it has never once lost sight of you, not even for a single breath. And now, as we arrive together at this final and most tender moment of your quiet time, I want you to simply stay here for just a little while longer. Don't rush back into the world just yet. Don't reach for your phone. Don't begin planning what comes next. Just remain here, in this breath, in this stillness, in this sacred space that has been yours alone for these past few moments. Because something has been happening inside you tonight, quietly, gently, without force. Something has been shifting, not dramatically, not loudly, but in the way that only the soul recognizes when it has finally been given permission to exhale after holding its breath for far too long. And I want you to carry something with you as you move from this moment back into your life. Not a heavy truth, not a complicated instruction, just one simple and steady reminder that your heart can return to again and again whenever the noise of life becomes too loud. You are not alone. You have never been alone. And you will never be alone in anything that comes next. Because the same God who met you in this quiet space tonight is the same God who will be with you when tomorrow arrives with all of its uncertainties and demands and unexpected moments. His presence does not stay behind when the stillness ends. He goes with you into the morning, into the difficult conversations, into the waiting, into the unknown, into every single moment that feels too heavy to carry by yourself. And maybe tonight was not about hearing something completely new. Maybe it was simply about remembering what your heart already knew but had forgotten somewhere beneath the weight of everything you have been carrying. That you are seen, that you are known, that you are loved in a way that does not require you to earn it, maintain it, or prove yourself worthy of it. A love that was decided before you ever made a single mistake. A love that remains after every difficult season. A love that has followed you through every version of yourself you have ever been and still chooses to stay. So as you close your eyes tonight, let that be the last thought your heart rests in. Not your worries, not your unfinished situations, not the pressure of tomorrow. Just this: you are held. You are loved, and God is not finished writing your story yet. The best chapters are still ahead, and He is already in them, waiting for you to arrive. You made it through today, and that already says something powerful about the grace that is still carrying you. Rest now. You are safe here. If tonight's message touched something deep inside your heart, then this is your gentle reminder that you are not meant to walk through life alone. Open your Bible tonight, even if just for one verse. Speak to God, even if just in a few quiet words. And if you are someone who is still searching, still questioning, still figuring out what faith means for you, know that God's door is never closed to an honest heart. Subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications, because every week we create spaces exactly like this one. Spaces where you can slow down, reconnect with God, and remember who you truly are in Him. Share this video with someone who needs to hear tonight that they are not forgotten. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do for another person is simply say, "I thought of you, and I wanted you to know you are not alone."